Great, so round 2 with Miss Ophelia, we are going to go over and demonstrate just what we've covered with leash pressure. So we've gone over kind of the main pieces of our reward work and how that fits into building new behaviors and reinforcing behaviors that we have. But we also can integrate a system of tactile cues and pressure in order to reinforce behavior as well. It also will allow us just kind of a secondary communication system if we have a dog that doesn't necessarily want the food reward in that moment or find that reinforcing at that time. So you'll kind of see as we work dogs, I'm often integrating pressure all the time in fairly subtle ways, and basically I won't go crazy into all of the details of what pressure is, how it works, and why we use it. We do have a video that is a little more general about all of those pieces that you can review, but I'd like to kind of show just kind of the mechanics of what we've taught her during her boarding portion of the program. Oscar, enough. And so, close that. What are you doing? All right, so basically in a nutshell, we apply pressure in order to kind of encourage the dog into a specific behavior. And so we do this using a few different techniques as we go, but the main pieces are that we apply pressure to ask for what we're looking for, and we release pressure as kind of our primary reward to that. Often I will follow that up with a secondary reward, so basically just our food reward or toy reward if our dog is interested in that at the moment. And that way it kind of allows me to theoretically reward my dog twice. First with the relief of the pressure, and second with the reward on the other end of that. So when we are looking at leash pressure work, we are looking at directional cues. So for the most part, it's a big piece of what I can use to guide my dog through sits. So one way we can do that is through luring with the food, like we already showed. Another way we can do that is once we have taught a pressure system, which these dogs have been learning since week 1 in the program, it now allows me to guide them through the world. So here on my right turns, I'm periodically applying pressure to the right to encourage her to move with me, and as soon as she shows intent to move with me, that is where the release of pressure comes from. So in the beginning, we are integrating something called escape training. Basically what that means is they feel the pressure and they learn how to turn it off. But with these guys, since they're a little further along, they're into a phase of the program that we would coin avoidance training. So basically, she is able to avoid even feeling that pressure at all by following me. So she's learned to predict that when I take a right turn, the pressure will turn on if she doesn't turn in time with me. So ultimately, the goal of that pressure is to only use it when we need it. And it's always providing information. It's not restraint. So I can use that pressure to block my dog from access to things, but it is with the expectation that when they start showing some internal restraint, they no longer will have that pressure applied. So I won't dive into it right now, but there are other forms of pressure as well. We'll especially talk about this when we get into the electric collar. But we always start with leash pressure because it provides strong clarity to the dog, because it already fits into a natural system of communication. Good girl. So aside from kind of our right and left, we also can slow our dogs down with pressure. Good. So that's what I'll use just kind of that straight back for. Good job. And then we will teach a sit and a down as well with that. So I'll do that with her. I'll reset so we can show it a little more clearly. Good girl. So upward pressure is a sit. You'll notice as soon as I see her butt start to drop, that's where that really dramatic release is. And then let's go. I'll show you her down as well. Just downward pressure on the leash, very light. She is considering getting back up, so I just applied a little more. I'm just gonna wait. Good. And I'll release that pressure when she shows intent, but if I have to reapply, if she lacks full commitment, then I'll just add a little again, or I'll just kind of wait and see what she gives me and reward when she gives me the final result. While we've got her in a down, I'm gonna kind of chat about our loose leash walking work. So, you know, pressure aside from our positions, it dovetails nicely into teaching the dog to walk politely next to us. And you know, that's kind of the epitome of our leash work, is it's opening a line of communication where we're able to essentially talk through the lead. First thing before we dive into the specifics is how you hold your leash matters. So as we start looking at more structured walk work, you're going to want to kind of get organized in a way that allows you to efficiently apply and release pressure as needed, and also handle your food as you reward your dog for completing specific behaviors. So for me, I always walk my dogs on the left, but you by no means have to. It's traditional in dog training. You know, when you compete in obedience events and most sports, heeling on the left is the expectation. And there's all sorts of, you know, chatter about theories of why this is and, you know, where that came from. But the main reason why I find that functional now is just if I am out with my dog exploring the world, it's inevitable that we'll end up walking on a road at some point without sidewalks. So, you know, road rules and etiquette would have you walking into traffic, so you'd be on the left side of the road. And then that allows my dog to be on the opposite side of me. So I am between my dog and cars at any given point. So from a safety standpoint, I find that to be the most useful. You can teach both in either. You know, I often walk multiple dogs at a time, so my dogs learn either or, but predominantly on the left. So with that, I'll be kind of referencing all of my handling, assuming the dog is on the left. So if you do it the other way, just flip everything around. First things first, how you hold the leash matters. So my preferred way is to hold the majority of the leash and the slack in my right hand, and then I use my left hand for guiding pressure or to reward the dog as the dog's on my left. This prevents me from having to cross over and feed with my right hand, and it allows me to like shorten and loosen my leash as much as I need. I also, how you hold the leash in your right hand matters. So I will, with this loop on the end, put my thumb through, and if I had a very short leash, I would probably hold it just like this, but usually I have kind of a bite of leash that I need more of, so I'll loop it back up over and close my fingers over it again. So this allows me to have a little more manageable leash in my left hand, so I'm not kind of way out here trying to give direction to my dog with kind of all this slack around. It allows me to be very subtle in my movement and kind of just relax into the walk. What I don't want to do is either hold my leash like this. Basically, you know, safety, you know, it's very easy to pull the leash out of your hands that way compared to this thumb lock method, and also injury. So what a lot of people will do is wrap the leash around their hands. And aside from the fact that that doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room to allow your leash to be shorter or looser, it also has a safety element to it where if you have a very strong dog, which she's, you know, a larger breed, strong animal, she could pull so hard and pinch your hand so much that it could cause injury to your hand, and I have known clients who have experienced that. So for ease of use and for safety, I always have my hands on the leash in this way, and then I have my left hand using guiding pressure. So I'll demonstrate that in an actual structured walk. So basically what that means is my dog is in heel position, right here. We've lost her. Guide her into position. traditional like heeling work or structured walking is always on the left here, but I like my dog to be kind of in this little bubble right next to me, right in line with my left leg. So you'll see her front legs are just a step behind my line of my legs, and her eye line is in line with me. So that way I can kind of give her feedback and direction very easily. It also allows me to make left and right turns. If my good. If she were slightly ahead of me, that makes a left turn very difficult because I'd have to cross through her or get out ahead of her or change sides behind her. So it just kind of creates this shuffle that is very uncomfortable and not very useful. So basically, I'm going to maintain this position through my handling and using leash pressure to show her where I want her for the moments of our walk where I really want her working. So basically, we're going to use this as a starting point, and I'm going to chat a little bit about when I'm using this and why versus when I may want to offer my dog more freedom. But for starting, I'm just going to kind of show you what the mechanics of that are. Okay, let's go. On my right turns, I'm kind of applying pressure as she gets a little further away from me to keep her with me if needed. She's pretty good at just kind of following and being in position anyways, so it doesn't require a lot of pressure. Good girl. Extra bonus points if I get engagement. Good job. And she's kind of in a perfect position of just behind me following. And then that means when I go to make my left turns, really nice. She's clear of me and has plenty of room, so I don't end up stepping on her toes. Good girl. Right I'll add a little pressure. She wants a little focus. No big deal. And then I'm going to show you a little bit, if you have a dog that starts forging ahead and trying to kind of test that position, she may not give it to us, but you'll notice right here I've got my nice loose leash. I don't need a left hand on the lead because she's giving me really nice position. I don't have any reason to apply pressure to her. And so basically, I'm going to, good girl. If I find, so here she's starting to sneak out ahead, little bit of blocking pressure there early, so I don't wait for her to be way out ahead of me. I just wait long enough for, to show intent. I'll just add, good, that tiny bit of feedback to say, hey, wait up, you're going a little too fast. And then I let off as soon as she goes. Good girl. For other dogs, this may be a little more challenging, but with her, she's pretty sensitive, especially on the prong collar, so it allows me to use very light pieces of pressure rather than having to apply potentially a little more force on a different tool. So it allows me to be very subtle with my use. Good girl. Good. Yeah. And then same with our little upward pressure for our sit. Pretend I'm chatting with someone. I wouldn't have even had to break conversation. I could just use my leash to kind of guide her into position. If I want to get real fancy, I can do a little bit of pressure with the leash in my foot to guide her into a down. She's pretty good about just kind of laying out on the floor and taking a break. So, those are kind of your key fundamentals of how you use the leash to guide your dog and how to package them up into a nice structured walk. So the big important piece about that. So starting off, you'll want to, set your dog up for success by doing short little snippets of work like this. You're basically asking as much of your dog as they can handle at that time. So if I'm getting a beautiful walk like we were just showing, I may start venturing out. So, she's following nicely. She doesn't require too many reminders. I don't have to up the level of pressure very much to get the response I'm looking for. And that's when I would start what I would say is expanding my bubble. So pretending I was working on this in my driveway at home, I would then start maybe walking 2-3 houses down, doing those same drills. I'd start integrating more straight lines instead of turns, just because that gives the dog more opportunity to kind of check out and forget that they're working. And so basically I'm only asking my dog for as much as they can handle, but I'm kind of testing the waters constantly to go, all right, are we ready for a longer straight line, or do we need to keep it short and sweet? So with her, you know, she's definitely ready to start working longer straight lines. We've been doing that out of here. It's just more difficult to show on video and not walk out of frame. You know, typically, especially with dogs that can be a little more excitable, which she can be sometimes, I'm going to start my walk with that nice structured work. So they're learning that when we go out into the world, we're starting focused, we're starting interactive, and basically you earn your freedom through these interactive obedience routines. So once she's shown me that she's able to refocus when I need her to, then I can start introducing a little more at liberty work while you're out on the walk. So what I will do is I'll cue the dog into that structured walk, either verbally or through my body language. So that picture of being nice and packaged up on leash, the dog will read this and associate that with all the reinforcement that comes from maintaining that position in the way that I just demonstrated. So that picture itself will be a cue that we are starting a structured walk. But what I can do, especially in the early stages when the dog is first learning this and I only want to do short sessions of practice, or if we are doing a very long walk and I don't want to ask too much of my dog, is I can work in some moments where I allow them to break out of that really structured work and go explore a little bit, but with permission. So what that will look like is I will go from using that structured walk, and in the same way that we'll teach a release from like a sit stay or a down stay, I'll use my release cue to allow the dog to go at liberty in the environment. So I'll use that same word that I typically use, which is go, but it could be okay, break, free, whatever. And that just cues the dog into being allowed to check out things around them and not be in such a like structured, packaged picture with you. So with that, I am going to kind of demonstrate that first, and then kind of circle back to what we're looking at. So, Ophelia, let's go. So I've got her nice and packaged up, giving her the picture of a structured walk. My leash handling is all very uniform every time. And then when I'm ready, I can release her with that go. And allow her to have a little bit of freedom. And I make it very obvious to the dog. I'll say, go. And then I back up. And so that fully breaks her out of that position. And, you know, that way communicates to her that the expectation is no longer stay right with me. So I don't think I can stay on frame and still do it. But if I were looking to really allow her to check out and explore her environment, I'd probably go somewhere grassy that I know is going to be interesting. Kind of intentionally went over here to see if she might find this little puddle interesting. And so it allows the dog to have a moment to not be like on the job. And because dogs really don't have a crazy amount of endurance for obedience work naturally, I like to give these breaks fairly regularly, especially if I can tell my dog is starting to struggle with maintaining positions. So, you know, I think out in a field or in a park, you're going to see a dog a little more readily check out, especially this dog, just because she is more interested in what's around her. There's not a lot to check out here, but it does allow me to have this element of freedom. My only caveat to this is even when I've released my dog from a structured walk, I'm still expecting them to not pull. So she has now 6 feet of leash that she can go and explore with. She doesn't need to be next to me, but she's not now permitted to drag me across the parking lot. So basically, if I found that she were doing that, I'd either use leash pressure, like here, if she's starting to check something out and I want to encourage her away from that, I just add a little pressure to remove her from the item. and then release. If it's really committed, then I may go back to putting my dog into some structured work. Good girl. So that they no longer have that kind of tempting access to the distraction. Go. But it's a balancing act. You know, the only way that I would allow my dog to pull is if I were to put different tools on them than I normally have during our obedience work. So dogs will associate the tools that they have on during training with kind of like their work mode tools. So this is utilized very frequently with like service dogs. So you'll find that you know, service dogs typically are not supposed to be pet while wearing their vest, because their vest is their cue that they're in work mode and that they need to be on the job. Hi, Crazy. But the same thing can be applied here, and typically what I'll use is a harness for that, though with bigger, powerful dogs, you know, definitely need to be mindful that it may create some element of danger, that if your dog does try and pull and take off after something, they do have a lot of leverage to do so now. So it's something that I often use with puppies when we're first learning, and I'll allow them to pull on lead in contexts where I want to give them at liberty work when they have a harness on. But you know, if it's an older puppy and we are starting to integrate more obedience work, then I may have a slip lead or a prong collar on, or even a martingale collar if they work well on that, just to cue them into this focused work. So I may alternate between the two. With my own dog, we do a sport called canicross, so that's where the dog is taught to pull on a harness, and it's like a mushing sport, so it's similar to like dog sledding, bike joring, ski joring, just running, where the dog is out in front of you and pulls you to add power. So in that context, he's allowed to pull, but on his prong collar, he knows that he is never permitted to do that, and the way that that solidifies is that the handler is very consistent. So all of this work depends on the owner maintaining this communication system every time. So you know, you're likely to see a dip in the effectiveness of your training if sometimes you're allowing your dog to pull and other times you're asking with pressure and not releasing until you get the result you're looking for. So you know, it's fairly straightforward to introduce, but it does require that when your dog is on lead, you are on the job making sure that you are getting the behaviors that you want out of your dog and not getting unwanted reps that are then creating habits that you don't want to form in the long run. But with Ophelia, she is very responsive, especially to the prong collar. So you know, it doesn't take a lot for her to start building this consistency. And so a lot of it will just come down to getting familiarity with this handling as the owner, getting to really watch her responses and get a feel for what brings this dog out when you need it, and what you need to apply in order to create this kind of success in the long run. But yeah, I think we're good for today. We'll do more active work later in the day.